So what happens if a black progressive and a white libertarian walk into a bar? You're about to find out when my special guest, Nico House, joins me on Rob Nelson Live. Hey, I'm Rob Nelson. I used to host a show on Fox, and now I do a digital live stream called @Rob Nelson Live. And my whole mission is to figure out how in this time of division we can find common ground.
Speech, and they're not allowed to do that anymore.
No, I understand what it's up.
They be focused on rebuilding California.
Oh, it's so true. Come on. This is where this gets real. He says your headings. I wouldn't want to be black and driving in a car. Right. Point there, right? Some of what's in this music, you can't sanitize it. All right, hey guys, welcome to the show tonight. We got a fun one. I'm super excited. We're back to having guests. We haven't had guests for a long time. So coming at you from the virtual studio in Florida, producer Crafty, the virtual studio in Los Angeles, and you guys on whatever social streaming platform you are on. Hey, there's producer Crafty wearing plaid, as always, a fashion statement, guys. Don't mimic it. Just let it be a standout. And always, as always, love all the interaction you guys do through the show, right? Can't get to every comment, but love getting them, love putting them up on screen as we go, and love when you guys have your own meta conversation. So tonight, I got a really fun guest. His name is Nico House. He is the host of a show called Mi Casa es Su Casa, a digital show, popular, awesome show, by the way. And he is also the founder of the MCSC network, Mi Casa es Su Casa, and the founder of the DNC lawsuit, which we're going to get into during the previous election campaign. So, Nico, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Rob. I appreciate you bringing me on. And to answer your question, they get really drunk.
Yeah, exactly. You
That's
know what, though?
happens.
Once upon a time, guys, it used to be like in a galaxy far, far, far away, for those of you who are Star Wars fans, it used to be that you could actually go places with people who are very, very different than you politically and have fun. And today we live in a world where it's literally like people delete them from their Facebooks and their social accounts. And to be honest, Nico, a whole lot of people would be like, if two opposing viewpoints walk into a bar, somehow it's going to get ugly. They're going to yell at each other. Somebody's going to walk out angry, and, you know, the whole scene. I mean, it's sad, but I think that's kind of the climate we're in some ways.
It is sad, but also I feel like that's how social media portrays those interactions, because like I live in Miami, and not for nothing, Miami is pretty conservative in a lot of ways, not so much socially, but like when it comes to a lot of policies that actually have nothing to do with Miami, will never ever affect us. But, you know, everybody has to have an opinion. And whenever I talk to people I disagree with, we have a good time anyway. Like, it's actually more fun when you disagree with somebody, you know, respectfully, because y'all can have, it's like sports talk if you're doing it right. And although these issues can be emotionally charged, I feel like as long as you try not to presuppose someone's intentionality, then like, and you judge that person for who they are, hopefully morally, then you can reach a common ground on a lot of issues. And the issue you disagree with, you just say, hey, it's our different experiences, and we're not going to get there. But that person is still, you know, they're cool, and you can still enjoy the experience anyway.
Now, and we're going to get to that in a couple of minutes, because I think part of the problem with that has to do with, guys, we're going to get a little into talking about critical race theory at some point. Won't go into the weeds on it. But I think partly we've created a division where people are making judgments about people on externalities that make that harder to do, Nico. But before we get into that, I want to just back up a little about you, because you have a pretty interesting background. So for those of you who don't know who Nico is, he's not just the host of a really cool show and of a really cool network, but he's got an interesting progressive, and you've had some really cool political experiences, one with Bernie and the DNC stuff, and with Tulsi Gabbard. So let's just take a second, you know, and just kind of the quick pick of, you know, what happened with Bernie and the DNC lawsuit stuff, and then into Tulsi.
So I was the founder of the largest Bernie Sanders organization in the country in 2016. It's Carolina Students for Bernie Sanders, while I was at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And because of the great work we did on the ground with the students, and then subsequently what we did working with the community organizers, I was promoted to the acting state director for his campaign in 2016 too. And it was through that experience that I ended up finding out some rigging was going on. I mean, and when I tell you, talk about a smoking gun, literally the person who was doing the rigging tried to tell me that another person in the campaign was fired so that we wouldn't talk to each other, but they didn't know we had already established a relationship because we had already been suspecting that there were some things going on. And so because of that, I mean, to make a long story short, we were able to, all that stuff that came out about Donna Brazile, the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund, we were the one that broke the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund story because of that experience. And that's how we were so confident that we could get the DNC fraud lawsuit heard in front of court. But it was because I was friends with the former treasurer of the North Carolina Democratic Party. And that's how in the Victory Fund, when the progressives were trying to create a Victory Fund, the North Carolina Democratic Party actually shut it down because they said, we already have a Victory Fund and it's the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund. And basically we saw all the connections with the states and how they were laundering money between each other.
Why, so, Nico, why do people, I mean, and for those of you who don't know, Donna Brazile, I know it was a while ago, but basically she knew questions before the debate. The DNC was on keeping this is the Hillary race, not, this is, 2016, was in on keeping Bernie Sanders out. Why do you think the Democratic Party has such a thing about not letting progressives like Bernie Sanders have a real shot? Is it because they're afraid progressives can't win, or is it something worse than that?
It's definitely not that. I mean, the policy that Bernie were pushing were ridiculously popular. Medicare for all is almost in some form or another, or single payer healthcare rather, is in some form or another supported by everybody. It's like 70% support amongst everybody, like 95% at this point amongst Democrats. It's not even about Bernie per se. It was more about the energy that came from the Bernie Sanders campaign, the people who were inspired, journalists like myself who came from it, and really began to change the entire political atmosphere and what was deemed, real news versus what we see in corporate news on CNN and MSNBC, who is honest, who isn't. And it really made everyone have to change their tone in one way or another by the time 2020 came around, right? In the primary, all of a sudden, everybody sounded like Bernie Sanders, except for Tulsi, of course, who sounded like herself. But it was really amazing to see the energy that happened. Unfortunately, we did see a lot of that co-opted because they were aware of how effective it could be. And to be honest, Bernie let a lot of people down because he ended up kowtowing to the establishment anyway. And so we didn't see that that energy used effectively. Instead, we saw the left become fractured because it was people who said they were about policy, but were really about the specter and the brand of Bernie versus the people who were in it for the right reasons, like myself, who took a lot of hits because we held them accountable and held them to the same standard that we held all politicians to, rather than making them the exception. Right.
And, it bugged me to no end that Bernie kowtowed to the establishment.
Yeah, it broke my heart. That was probably what in my professional career, the biggest disappointment and a wake up call. I mean, I'm only 32 years old, and so you gotta think I was in my 20s still, late 20s, but still in my 20s. So politically naive to a certain extent, and that was a gut wrenching punch. Seeing him sell out the people who gave him money that they didn't have, only to see him bow down to the establishment twice.
Yeah. Listen, I gotta tell you, I voted for Bernie in the prime. It pissed me off beyond belief when he did that. And it pissed me off, Nico, when he did it this time as well, because I felt
it was worse this time.
What's that?
It was worse this time.
Yeah, because I felt like, look, it's like you don't go into a thing and go, I'm the best guy for the job. I'm the best person to do this. I can make this happen. I'm the one with a vision that can fix this country. And then go, but you know what? Maybe I should let someone else do it so we're sure they win the election. It's like, F that. You're the person for the job. Fight for, what kind of sport? What would you imagine a sports analogy of someone doing that? It'd be like, I'm really the one that can close this. I can make the shot.
Yeah,
I can score the
LeBron.
touchdown,
LeBron James. I can't imagine. He's literally that sports analogy.
right. I'm gonna.
Let me let Matthew Dellavedova take his last shot. I'm just gonna make the best basketball.
Yeah. No, it's like let someone else do it. I mean, you're the closer. Close. And it killed me when he was like, I'm not gonna fight it because I don't have the best shot of winning in the general. Like, what kind of confidence is that? I think Bernie Maybe he would have lost to Trump. Maybe he wouldn't have. But right now, I can tell you, having Biden, in my view, we got a scarecrow in office who doesn't represent anything he says. He doesn't know what he represents. And if he's really what he says he's been his whole life, he's not what he says now. He's a whole different guy for the last 40 years.
So I think there are two things. I think that there's no way that Bernie would have lost to Trump, and the reason I know that is because Trump actually admitted it in audio that he knows he would have lost. So Trump co-opted the populist message and just kind of molded the rhetoric so it was more appealing to the right. But he was talking about how NAFTA was bad, how he needed to kill TPP, and he was threatening Republicans like, if y'all don't introduce a bill, I'm just going to give everybody health care and we're going to pay for it. Like, he was saying things obviously in a more abrasive and brash way, but he knew how effective Bernie's message was. That's how his rallies, he broke records in the Republican primaries and really as president, just like Bernie did, right, in the Democratic primary. But the reason I feel like this time was worse was because you also have to look at how he was selling Biden, right? When he would go on to like Jimmy Fallon, he would be like, I feel like Trump is I feel like we're dealing with a racist. We're dealing with somebody who is a liar. We're dealing with a warmonger. We're dealing with somebody who does not respect the Constitution. And I'm like, okay, hold up. I thought he was here to pitch Biden. Why is he explaining why we shouldn't be voting for Biden? And then he would say Trump. And I would be like, okay, that's Biden. And then he would say, Biden is a good friend of mine. Hold up, double back, bro. He was a segregationist. He is actually a segregationist on paper, not like racist, like, racially apathetic, which is probably more like Trump is a New York racially apathetic, old New York rich guy. Like that's how they are. He'll respect you if you have money, you can offer him something, but outside of that, he doesn't really care about what you're going through. Biden is a segregationist. He is a racist who uses power institutionally to make sure black people cannot have things actively. And that's your good friend. So now you have to wonder, do you actually care about racism, Bernie, or is it about your friends and who can get you into positions that you have always wanted to be in? Because now he's the budget chairman. All of a sudden, it's Biden cut child poverty in half. Right. That's a lie.
Right. 100% agree with you. Listen, I'm 100% agree with you on all of that. And okay, so let's move quickly to Tulsi, because that's one that pissed me. I didn't know you were part of her operation, but again, I'm a libertarian, but I'm a liberal libertarian. I loved Tulsi Gabbard. I liked so many things about her. I loved her authenticity. I loved the way she really I felt she was the most honest, authentic, the way she spoke.
She does not know how to be dishonest. Literally.
What's that?
She does not know how to be dishonest, literally.
Yeah, and the media completely railroaded her. CNN was like, we are going to make her look almost as bad as Trump. She's like, she's basically a terrorist lover, like she's in love with dictators. She's this, she's that. She doesn't get any airtime. Why? And you were a part of her press team. Why did they do that to Tulsi?
Because you're talking about a candidate that would have won all 50 states. Trump knew how much of a threat she was to his candidate. That's the only Democratic Party candidate that he ever said anything positive about.
Yeah, it's true.
He would not attack her. Because
it's so true.
Now, mind you, I don't know if am I allowed to cuss on here?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want, man.
So I don't know if you know about her most viral tweet, which is she said Trump putting America first isn't being Saudi Arabia's bitch. Literally. Called him a bitch on Twitter. And he still would not criticize her because he knew every single thing that she was saying was not only right, but it was coming from an honest place. You're talking about someone who has military experience, who understood what the cost of war actually was and introduced a bill to end the war in Syria in 2014, to demilitarize the police in 2014, who took her experiences, evolved from that, realized Bernie was getting cheated, left the DNC as she was the vice chairwoman of the DNC. Van Jones described her as the anointed one of the anointed creator of the Democratic Party. All she had to do is shut up, let Hillary win, and she would have been the next president. Yep. And she was like, nah, I don't want it. And they had to ask her, are you scared of the Clintons? And she was like, the Clintons don't scare me. So you have somebody who is that bold and convicted and young and had everything offered to her and really had everything she could ever want and gave it up. And is like, I'm going to go head to head with the establishment. That person becomes extremely dangerous, especially because everything y'all say y'all want identity wise, she is all of it and then some. But she's saying, don't listen to the establishment. Listen to, people need to unify and don't fall into the left-right dichotomy, the false dichotomy. That's a problem. And then once again, when you're not afraid to stand up to Hillary Clinton, when you're talking about ending wars, when you're talking about decriminalizing all drugs, a lot of things that libertarians agree with, and you're pitching in a way that everyone can accept, that makes you a dangerous candidate. And election integrity too. She was the best on that.
So let's jump into a couple of these topics. So one, I just want to be clear. You're a progressive.
Yep.
You're a lefty.
Yep.
I mean, I don't like the left-right divide, but for the sake of people out there,
people would call me a lefty.
They put you on the left. I'm a libertarian, you know, which people means they think they put me on the right, and then I say I'm a libertarian because my policies, you know, I want universal health care and a universal basic income, but I'm a libertarian, and I have a rationale for that we don't need to get into now. But you really are on the left. And, you know, you're on the left, you're way left of Biden, you're way left of the mainstream Democratic Party. And yet you share some views that could veer dangerously into libertarianism.
Well, technically, I am considered a libertarian.
You're a total sellout.
Technically, I'm considered a libertarian socialist, so it's not that crazy.
Center libertarian socialist. But to most people, that doesn't make sense. And by the way, you know, I'm sorry, but you're black. So, you know, you really can't be anything right of center unless you're Candace Owens and you're not really black. I'm just saying, I'm kidding, obviously. But I mean, but, you know, it's like that notion that you can't possibly not fit in some kind of box. And in your case, okay, the box is left. It can't have center libertarian in there too.
Yeah, well, to be honest, you wouldn't be the first white person, specifically a leftist, that would tell me what I can and can't believe. So no, trust me, that's the least offensive thing I've been told. So I mean, I've been told who I can and can't be friends with, who I shouldn't have on my show. And what's funny is they say it's because of what I quote unquote believe or not believe, but they actually never explain why I'm wrong. And it's because I'm not wrong. If you actually look at it from my perspective, it is very leftist. I told you, like we talked about before, I'm against federal income tax, and my reasons are all leftist reasons. But when they hear buzzwords, they don't know how to react. So they say, you're supposed to believe this. You can't disagree with me, because if you disagree with me and you're right, then that's a problem. And a lot of them won't really say why it is a problem, but we both know why.
So, and obviously, Nico, you know I'm kidding when I say all that, you know. Of course, but why is it but I want to go race for a second here. Why is it that it's typically, I think, more white people than my experience than black people who insist on putting black people in the box? I mean, maybe on the news it might not be
historic. I mean, no, on the news, I mean, Don Lemon, we're not about to Don Lemon. His mom cuts his hair. He don't even got a real barber. So first of all, we ain't gonna count people. Dan Jones ain't got no hair, so we don't know what's going on over there. But at the end of the day, this is not new. Like it's FDR. What literally talking about putting black people in the box. FDR founded redlining through the New Deal. He literally put black people in the box.
Right.
So this and there, I mean, Martin Luther King said it best, right? The most dangerous thing to black liberation isn't the KKK. It is the white liberal who's okay.
I didn't know he said that. I didn't know he said that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He absolutely said that. I think it was in the Birmingham jail where he wrote that letter. And he was absolutely, because he knew it's not the people who are avidly against us, that they make up kind of a small minority. It is the white liberal who are occupying these powerful positions who are okay. They'll say, oh, we don't like racism, but what they really mean is racism out in the open is uncomfortable. As long as you're doing it behind closed doors like everybody else, then it's cool. I mean, and if we need any more evidence of that, it's 2021, and we have a segregationist as president. We reward a segregationist, and you have the white elites on the liberal end telling you, you better vote for him, because Trump is, well, they used to say Trump is racist, but then when they realized they were introducing a racist, remember, it flipped to fascist. That's why they started using fascist instead of racist, because they realized they were putting up a racist.
So people are keeping track with what you're saying. Nico is saying Biden is the racist president.
Yes. I mean, the worst kind.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Trump is racially apathetic. He's racially apathetic, but that's not the same thing as using your institution of power specifically to target black people.
Hey, I agree with you completely. And it's bugged me to no end that every time I bring up the 94 crime bill, people go, well, that was a long time ago. It's like, it's not about how long ago.
It's still here. It's still here.
Well, exactly. But it's not even about how long ago it was. It's like maybe he has changed his views. That's possible, but I haven't seen anything in his life that suggests that
he
change.
refused to apologize for the 94 crime bill.
Yeah, I know.
He said whenever it was right, he said black people wanted it.
Yeah, exactly. Black people, the Black Caucus, the Black Congressional Caucus was on board.
Yeah.
The Black Caucus. I have a black friend who said, that's a joke, man.
Yeah, that's what he does. That's what he does. He goes, oh, well, the Black Caucus one time, man. Okay, yeah, the Black Caucus that y'all will crush. Remember Cynthia McKinney when she stood up for Palestine, and they literally redistricted her. They spent all their money to redistrict her, gerrymander her out of Congress. Now that she wasn't popular, they got her out and make sure she couldn't get back in.
So that's what
they do to black people who stand up to them.
Let's be freeform here. You brought up Palestine. Let's talk for a couple minutes about Israel and Palestine. Mm-hmm. I think, I want to find some areas we agree on, some we disagree on, because that to me is the whole point of how I think we can have real conversations. We don't all have to agree. We can find surprising agreement despite the boxes people want to put us in, the labels people want to put on us. But we also, I think you and I probably have some genuine disagreements on certain things that are, go down the line. I'm a libertarian progressive. You're a different kind of progressive. Although you're a progressive socialist, libertarian centrist. I can't keep track of all the labels.
Libertarian socialist. I'm an independent, and
you're an independent.
I know people need a label sometimes just for them to listen to you. That's why I have to say stuff sometimes. But
I think caveat right out the gate. Palestine has gotten screwed for a long time. It's gotten screwed by Israel. It's gotten screwed by the Arab world. The Arab world, in my view, never wanted to let Palestine grow, or they could have infused trillions of dollars into it. I mean, they let it remain a puppet to sit there and fester in the middle as a thorn in Israel's side. That's my view. But I also think Israel has been unfair. I'm not defending Israel and saying it hasn't done anything wrong. I'm just saying if I were surrounded by a bunch of countries that until recently only 2 or 3 of them even acknowledged that a right to exist, and before that none, I'd be a little like F you too if you try anything. I'm going to just keep blasting you back. Your thoughts? Okay.
So are you familiar with the Panama Papers?
Yeah.
In the Panama Papers, it said that one of the largest contributors to Netanyahu's campaign was Saudi Arabia's president, or excuse me, king at the time.
I didn't know that the Saudi Arabian king. I didn't know that,
because you have to think there's a Shiite thing. I'm sure you already are fully aware of that. But along those specific lines, you have authoritarian regimes and then the more democratic or socialist. So you have the Saudi Arabias, and then you have the Assads. You have the UAEs, and then you have the Irans. So the Irans allied more so with Palestine. The UAEs and the Saudi Arabias of the world ally more with the authoritarian people like Bibi Netanyahu, because Israel, in order for them to be our intelligence asset, because they provide the most military intelligence in that part of the world, we have to give the reason for them to have that. And then think about it. Yeah, that sounds all well and good, but who's the only one that has a weapon in that region? Until you get to the southeast part of Asia, like where closer to Pakistan, who has them, and in India, but the Middle East, they're the only one that has a nuclear weapon, and it's perfectly fine. And then you get just inside of Israel and Palestine. Palestine hasn't been a thorn in Israel's side. Israel was put there after World War II. Without Palestine's consent. And before that, Great Britain had control over Palestine, and not like they wanted it to happen, but I mean that, how Great Britain had colonized a majority of the area. So but the United Nations own charter says, by definition, Israel is an occupier. And then on top of that, Palestine has every right to defend itself until the occupier has left.
But my point is, I get it. But and what the UN says really to me is irrelevant, because the UN always goes against Israel. I'm just saying,
because it's supposed to say that there's a right to defend themselves. Everybody says that, but then when the charter says so does Palestine, then the conversation all of a sudden stops.
Yeah, I get it. I'm not saying either side doesn't have fair grievance. I'm just saying it bugs me that the left in America can more consistently now has to be like, Palestine's good, Israel's an oppressor. Meanwhile, Hamas is a terrorist group. What?
Go ahead.
Hamas is a terrorist group funded by Israel inside Palestine, effectively the government, not elected, but they're running things.
No, you said funded by Israel?
I'm sorry, funded by Iran. Would I say Israel?
Yeah,
No.
that's probably more accurate. Yeah, I say Israel. Oh, wait a minute. I was like, that's new.
That's news. Wait, Israel's funding terrorist groups in the Middle East to hurt them. And to me, it's like and I don't want to go too far down on this, but it just feels like Israel's constantly getting attacked. And I don't know anybody who wouldn't respond aggressively at a certain level, and it gets stuck in your psyche.
So what happens is Israel says they're the ones attacked first, but that's generally a lie, because when you go to any other news source around the world, they actually report when Israel starts launching rockets randomly.
No, Hamas launched these rockets first in this last.
This recent altercation. Okay, so here's what happened.
IDF
occupied a mosque illegally.
Yeah, I know, but
holding them hostage.
I know there was an occupation.
Well, hold on. If this happened in the States, right? Somebody was occupying a Christian church overseas, and this happened, or even in Central or South America, and it was an opposing force and you give them multiple warnings over days, and then you only attack that area because, and you'd be lucky if this is America, they will blow the whole bitch up. So just to be clear,
okay.
But when someone retaliates, when somebody gives specific instructions, leave our people alone. We're not even doing anything to you.
Okay.
And then you don't do anything, and then you just stay there. You're testing them, and then they retaliate. You can't then be like, oh, they strike first.
My point to me, this, and we'll move on to another topic, but this to me proves the point, which is, at a certain level, we see what we want to see. I mean, I hear what Nico's saying when it's like, they occupied first, so they had a right to launch missiles. I'm going to make the opposite argument as a close on this. I think Hamas knew exactly what they were doing. They used that occupation of the mosque as an excuse to launch missiles to see how much they could get away with Biden as a new president. Either way, some of these issues we're not going to see eye to eye on, and that's okay. Its point is we have the dialogue, which we haven't been having, and that's why I'm psyched we're doing this. So that's my final thought on that. Okay, moving on. Nico, just reminding people, Nico House, I've got an awesome guest, Nico House. He is the host of Mi Casa y Su Casa, a fantastic digital show, and the head of his own network, Mi Casa y Su Casa, which is a cool digital network streaming everywhere in the planet and beyond. Nico, I love that you're here with me. Thank you. Let's pick a fun. So one of the things we can agree on is that that we need to have dialogue that we're not having, right? And we need to kind of at some level bring that. We live in a society where we're so divided that people literally feel like I can't even like you if you do say, think, or are certain things. If you're a Republican, if you're a leftist, if you're a certain color, if you think transgender athletes who trans into being a male shouldn't be able to compete in girls' sports, you're transphobic. Like you're immediately, and therefore you're not worthy of conversation. It's not like there's even a valid argument to have, right? How do we fix? I mean, am I right? We're to that point.
It does seem that way. My solution has been, I try to explain to people, I'm like, look, before we even begin this conversation, if it becomes something that's like kind of like emotionally, it shouldn't be that way, but it is because maybe they have a personal experience dealing with it and you don't know, because you can't know their experiences just like they can't know your experiences. So because of that, we have to have a conversation basically saying, I'm not going to assume your intentions, because from what I've seen so far, you're an honest person and you're a good person. But also we have to understand that we are both limited by our experiences. So wherever we're coming into this conversation, we're both coming in from two different places. And we have to kind of understand that and give and take, be honest enough to give where you don't have any experience in that arena, and be willing to listen to the other side and vice versa. But also that goes for me too. And that's where I think we could really see a lot of honest conversations start to be had. But the ego is the most likely place where people are speaking from. It's just an instinct, because ego is also defense. It's your defense mechanism. And so when you go into those conversations, people immediately get on the defensive because they're worried that you're attempting to manipulate them. Because, like, let's be honest, right? What have we learned over the last 4 years? What have people finally kind of started waking up to? Almost everything political in the mainstream is an attempt to manipulate them. And they don't want to be manipulated anymore. And so they're coming in defensive because not just because of the conversation we're having, but what I've been dealing with and what you've been dealing with.
Do you think the left, I am generalizing, but do you think a lot of people on the left feel as distrustful of the media as a lot of people on the right do?
Oh yeah, definitely. That like the real left, yes, 100%. I mean, hell, I wouldn't have a show otherwise. I would say that there's more on the right because, obviously they watch Trump get just dragged with lies. You know what I'm saying? Like people like myself are trying to criticize him for the truth. And then, of course, I would give him credit where credit was due. But they watched him get dragged with lies for 4 years straight. Right. And he was held to an inconsistent standard. Right. Like when they said that he incited a riot and that was a verifiable lie, he told everybody to respect the police and go home. Right. So they do distrust the media a little bit more than we do, or not me. But
it's interesting you say that because a lot of people on the left are pretty insistent that Trump started,
you're right,
insurrection. And hearing you say that, and I've argued, look, and I'm not defending Trump. It's like, I think the guy was a megalomaniac. I felt his response once that happened was, from what I can tell, disgusting. Instead of immediately responding and being like, this is horrible. Some part of him maybe even was, oh, well, it happened. It ain't so bad for me. But the fact that, you say that, like, if people are like, no, he did. So how does that align? Because I think most people on the left don't think what you think. They think Trump was evil from the beginning. He did nothing good. And he started, wanted to, an insurrection to take down democracy. Whereas you're saying Trump did some good things. He did a lot of bad things. And you called them both out, but the mainstream media just pummeled him for 4 years. How does that fit with most people on the left going, do you think that's what most people on the left think?
The thing about how he was basically kind of smeared for 4 years, most people on the left believe that, although they might not like him. However, liberals, who I don't consider to be leftists, because Joe Biden and somebody tell me the difference between Joe Biden and W. Bush. I really literally can't tell the difference. And he considers himself to be liberal. The liberals are leftists who want health care. That's it. And leftists want these things for everybody, not just at our convenience and being willing to step over anyone to get it. But as far as the insurrection is concerned, like the first thing is you show me an insurrection where a bunch of conservatives show up without their guns to take over a goddamn thing. Please tell me that. I would love to see that version of a goddamn insurrection. Where they take over what? Where are conservatives showing up with hundreds of thousands of people to take over anything, to commit a coup with no guns? That should have been everybody's first clue that there was something going wrong there. But also, because we do this thing called journalism over at the MCSC network, which I know is a rare thing nowadays, my team was there. They saw the whole thing go down. Their footage is constantly used and ran on CNN. It was actually used to convict somebody recently in a federal indictment. We didn't approve of it because we're not exactly sure that they were using the footage in good faith, but it got used without our consent. So we were there. They saw and recorded what Trump said, and they talked to people on the ground. And a lot of people were like, I don't know if there was rigging or not. I just came here to see, try to find out the truth. And there were people of all races there, all colors there, all political backgrounds. Like I just said, my team was there, and we're inostensibly leftist. So I want to address this for people who would watch this and go, this guy is a sellout. He's really not a leftist. He's really because he just said all kinds of good things about Trump. Said all kinds of people were there who weren't. There were black people there. There were brown people there. There really were. I know, but I'm saying, so when you get that boxing in that says you clearly must not really be a progressive leftist if you're saying that, what's your response? I would ask him to tell me why. Well, because you're saying that, because you're going with lies, knowing lies. We know Trump started a riot. We know Trump wanted an insurrection. We know Trump was a racist. We know black people who are the majority of black people couldn't possibly like Donald Trump. Those are facts. So you know what I would tell them? So are you not a progressive because you voted for Biden? I like that. I'm just trying, like 94 crime bill didn't happen. It definitely did. Okay. Didn't he say you're not black if you don't vote for me? Okay. Didn't he say he didn't want his daughters or his kids going to school in a racial jungle while arguing for segregationist legislation? It never apologized for any of that. So are you not left? I mean, a lot of the times they're not, but a lot of the times it is a misunderstanding and miscommunication. And the difference between us is I know what I'm talking about because I was there. And most of the time they're just reacting emotionally based off of, usually it's like the left has had a problem lately where they want to make friends through politics rather than making friends and just discussing politics and having their own politics anyway. I don't need politics for me to make friends. I'm a pretty cool guy. A lot of the left isn't like that, unfortunately. And so because of whatever experiences that have marginalized them in the past, the ability to get friends through these labels and these dog whistles and these buzzwords, because we all kind of create, a lot of people have been conditioned to make friends based off of certain cues to let them know that they would be accepted by that person. And the left has used politics to do that.
What do you think of, I want to just hit time flies. This is so much fun. What do you think of AOC? A true progressive?
Hell no. She's the most dangerous person on the planet. She's not loyal to the Democrats. She's not loyal to progressives. She is loyal to herself, which makes her particularly dangerous. I've said for a long time that she's the Democrats' version of Trump. And people didn't believe me. I said
the same thing, by the way. I've said the same thing. And it's part of what I liked about Trump. I do like about AOC. I like that she gets out there and like speaks, you know, riles it up at a mass level.
Like, here's what's, I know this is going to be a hot take. Trump was more anti-establishment than AOC ever considered being, right? This woman, I wish I could tell you I could tell you stories. I feel partially responsible for AOC. So I was the one who actually was, when she was getting pummeled, when she first won her primary, I was the one giving her the talking points to correct herself. And that CNN video that went viral, where she kind of got her act together, was all my talking points, because we were trying to get her, because she was not a politician at all.
Right.
But I almost regret it now, but hey, whatever. So like AOC literally pushed this quote unquote COVID relief bill, not the most recent one, but the one right before the pandemic that was an appropriations bill. It was a military budget appropriations bill. And the only reason we knew that was because Tulsi voted against it and told everybody. And then Trump subsequently vetoed it initially. So she didn't read the bill and was still telling everybody how good it was for her. You know how I know? Because it was a 600-page bill they got 2 hours before. That's most
politicians, right? That's most politicians.
Well, that is, but not every politician is selling themselves to be the progressive that AOC is. And not every politician gets, 9, 10, 12 million followers like AOC does and has the platform that AOC does.
So who do you think, name a person or two who you, at least somewhat recognizable, that you think is a true progressive leader right now?
Tulsi Gabbard. Well, I don't want to say progressively. I just want to limit it to leaders, because I don't want to so Thomas Massey is somebody that I actually greatly admire. Justin Amash is somebody that I like a lot. Obviously, Tulsi Gabbard. Barbara Lee is somebody that I like most of the time, except for when she kind of kowtows to the establishment when it comes to personality stuff.
You hate the establishment. You're like me, Nico. I think we both share a distrust of the establishment. Part of my problem with a lot of progressives, so-called today, and people on the right, is they love the establishment too much. It's like the establishment is not your friend.
Even when they say they don't. It's actually it's literally in the stars for me to hate the establishment. I read my birth chart the other day and it said, you hate all things established. That is literally what it said. I'm like, well, there you go. I figured out why I literally can't I can't ever believe in establishment narratives.
Right.
Today, Elizabeth Warren went out and tweeted about how Bitcoin causes all this waste in the environment. And I'm like, well, shit, I thought this was a problem, but maybe it isn't as big of a problem as I actually thought it was, because Elizabeth Warren is agreeing with me, and I've never agreed with anything she said.
She's the biggest sellout so-called progressive there is.
Yeah, we call her there's a Warren slide where you slide to the left and then you go hiss. She's a snake.
I do think, last thought on this, that Bernie is, I don't know him, but you do. I do think he's a true progressive, despite the fact that he sold out to the establishment.
He's not.
He's not?
It's heartbreaking. He's not.
He's not?
He actually has a hit. So there was a bill, for example.
Wait, why is Bernie not a true progressive?
I'm about to explain it to you. So there was a bill. There was a bill to get big money out of politics, which was one of Bernie's biggest platforms right during the election. And it was introduced by this group called Move to Amend, who was known for this. Bernie wouldn't go far enough. Like, he wouldn't just say all money out of politics. He still wanted PACs and corporate, and still allow corporations to donate to the PACs, et cetera, et cetera. They called him out respectfully. He refused to endorse the Move to Amend bill that all the progressives introduced in Congress in 2017 and 2018 because of that. right? Okay. So there's just that like that. The reason that Gaddafi was assassinated because Bernie with the rest of the Senate, but he was a co-sponsor, introduced the bill that led to Gaddafi being assassinated.
Wow.
Bernie will look at you dead in your face and say, we don't want that dirty socialism in Venezuela and Bolivia, or not Bolivia necessarily, but like the globe. But then he'll say, we're talking about that good old white socialism over there in Scandinavia. It's like, you mean the socialism without the imperialism?
Right.
Like,
all right.
And you see this over and over again in the inconsistencies. And at the end of the day, when you can look at me in my face and tell me a segregationist is your friend with zero concern about what that means to the people who supported you, you can't really be a progressive. You can be a good guy for the most part, but I can't call you in good conscience a progressive. If I want to hold you to the same standards I'm going to hold Trump and Biden to.
Okay, fair enough. Reddit comment, under whose administration? I think they're asking, did I work? When I was in law school, I worked for Clinton in Clinton's White House. That was an interesting, whole nother story. Interesting.
Yeah, man. Oh my God. Woo, that's a movie.
Yeah, there's a couple movies in it. Let's talk for a second. We're running out of time, Nico. Let's talk for a second about sort of just the big picture around race and elections and stuff, right? I mean, I'm sick of people. Here's been my take on these voter suppression or voter, what do they call them? What do the right call them? Voter.
Oh, they say voter fraud, but that's inaccurate. That's right. Inaccurate. Yeah.
But whatever they're calling them.
It's called election fraud. Voter fraud is when the voter takes it upon themselves to try to influence an election, literally by themselves. Election fraud is when there's a systemic effort to change it, usually by people in power.
Okay, before we go on to what I was going to ask you, I just want to take this comment. Fringe voices need to be crushed, else we get scenarios like Capitol Riot. See, this is the problem, British Indian 1857. It's not fringe voices that caused the Capitol Riot. It's not. And crushing fringe voices, first of all, fringe voices are fringe. People are making them seem like
by definition they can't cause riots.
And secondly, crushing voices never leads to anything good. It just doesn't. I don't know. I'm a true free speech person. And by the way, the biggest free speech advocates historically, like Justice Brandeis, were the true progressives. They were like more speech, better speech, because they wanted to defend against the more totalitarian, authoritarian right.
Can I just say, you know what would have also prevented the Capitol riots? When someone says there may have been election fraud, you be as transparent as humanly possible to prove there wasn't.
Right.
Because that's what we supposedly have checks and balances for. If you really want to prevent distrust in the system, then we should have transparency in our elections, which we absolutely do not. And that's what led to the distrust that led to the riot.
I'd agree with you.
If you have transparency, then we don't have this discussion.
I'd agree with you.
The people, it's the system.
I'd agree with you. And just before we go, I want to come back to transparency, Nico. But just when it comes to those bills, it bugs me that people keep saying they're Jim Crow laws. First of all, I know I'm a white guy, but whatever.
The most recent one?
What's that?
Which one?
The current slate of bills that are coming out in states to
those bills aren't good. People think that they're or unless are you talking about the ones that the Democrats are introducing or the Republicans?
The Republicans.
Okay, so which ones are you referring to then?
The ones like the Georgia voting law.
Oh, yeah, that's actually not. So that's people are getting the wrong idea about that.
Well, hold on. I want to hear your thoughts. Let me just finish my thought. My thought on it is, first of all, they may be trying to limit voting. They're trying to limit votes of Democrats because Republicans don't want Democrats to vote. And in urban communities, you have a high density of Democratic voters. You often have a high density of Democratic voters of color. I don't think it has anything to do with we don't want black people to vote. Jim Crow laws, black people are secondary citizens. It has to do, if anything, we don't want to let people vote who are going to vote for the other side. We don't care what color they are.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Now, there are specific scenarios like with interstate cross-check where they do target black people, but in Georgia, I don't think that's the case. I think you're right. I think it is limit Democratic voting because we just saw the Senate take 2 seats. And the Democrats spent the better part of the last 4 years taking over completely the election system by putting people in power in the institution, or creating institutions like the, election system. It's like the second largest now. It's not ESNS. It's the other one that's,
I don't know.
What is it? I can't remember what it's called, but it's been it's been a a hot topic, basically. It was the one where like Michigan their system got exposed, and then it was like
the new system. Yeah.
And the Democrats run that system, and they also now run ES&S, and so the Republicans are now scratching and clawing to get power back. But also that bill, they're talking about you can't hand out water in line. Like, first of all, it's not actually in the bill, but two, it makes it so that the loose laws that were being used to be honest, to allow Democrats to cheat more effectively or being tied up. And they're finally reacting to getting their ass whooped, because Republicans always do that.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
The Democrat bill, by the way, in the House and the Senate is bullshit. That is an attempt to grab all the power and maintain it, because they know they have no opportunity. They're in the midterm, they're probably gonna get their asses handed to them.
And I would argue that's 100% true. And I would argue that although I agree with you about some of the things they're tying up when it comes to some of these state bills, I still think Republicans are no different. They want to limit Democratic votes. And if they can do anything to make it a little harder for Democrats to vote, we're going to make it a little harder for Democrats to vote.
And third parties. Don't forget third parties.
And third parties. So here's the thing, right? And I wish we had more time, but we got about 2 minutes. We could have transparency, right? I mean, first of all, do you think there is fraud in the elections, one way or the other? Right? My view is there's fraud. I don't know how much. There's always fraud.
There is 100% always fraud. Literally, the election software is proprietary, which means it's owned by private companies, which means by law we can't get access to our votes that we're funding.
Right?
It's crazy.
The answer to this would be blockchain.
Absolutely.
We could have an open source voting on the blockchain. And by the way, that would mean everybody could vote, because you wouldn't need to worry about restrictions and times. You could literally make it easy for everyone to vote and prove who they are all at the same time.
And figure out somebody cheated.
What's that?
And figure out if somebody cheated.
Absolutely.
And then correct that specific error. And correct that specific error, because blockchain would keep it separate from everything else that happened. Right.
So we need that. And that's something the mainstream doesn't want on either side. They don't want blockchain, open transparency, open source voting, which would be the
decentralized voting. Yep.
So last thing before I let you go, I want to let you have the last word. In case anybody's watching this and thinks this guy's not a progressive, one of the things that makes me think you are the most progressive is you are not a fan of capitalism.
Yeah, right? I'm not a fan of capitalism. I'm not. Now, granted, it doesn't mean I believe that 100% like communism or socialism is the answer either. I believe we have to take every situation circumstantially and then apply mixed economies based off of everybody's individual situation.
Okay, and I get that, but why do you not like capitalism?
Because capitalism has probably killed more people than ever. I mean, we just witnessed everybody ignoring the fact that ivermectin exists so that they can justify the $32 billion they just gave to Pfizer that they just sued 3 years ago for healthcare fraud. Okay, that's why. Because this type of shit happens. People die, right. People get left behind, and self-interest are generally all people care about when it comes to capitalism. And by definition, in capitalism, the only way you can affect the economy is if you have capital. And that's not the way it should be, when we know for a fact in this country specifically, people were specifically kept from being able to get capital at an equitable rate as their white male counterparts, because obviously women couldn't even do it until a certain point.
So, and again, I hate to make these like 30-second questions, but I want to give you a chance to get a couple viewpoints out there. Systemic racism. Obviously, there is systemic racism. That's a given. But is critical race theory, everything is racially driven. You know, it doesn't matter if you expand legal remedies and constitutional rights, because it's built in, baked in every aspect of society. Nothing you can do about it.
Well, so the original critical race theory that was introduced, which is like decades ago, actually didn't say that. It just acknowledged the reality of systemic racism, which obviously was even worse at that time.
And is still there. There are still vestiges of systemic racism. But
exactly.
When you hear
now, this whole thing that everybody's racist and you should be and you should tell your kids they're racist. No, that's stupid. That's just not.
But that's what it's become. The racism, the clear, like one or the other. You're racist or you're anti-racist.
Yeah. When it really comes down to, like I said, we're all limited by our experiences. My brother literally convinced somebody to stop being quote unquote racist, but it was a guy from Alabama, was part of the Harrison family, which was the third largest like funder of the Confederate Army, and he never seen a black person in his life. My brother talked to him like a human, understood where he came from, and throughout the course of basic training, by the end of it, he stopped talking to his family because his family said if they would cut him off if he didn't stop being friends with my brother.
Wow.
And my brother, and he cut them off. Like to this day, they haven't even seen their grandkids because of that moment.
And that's an amazing story. And I want to be clear, I think there is a fair amount of real racism out there that's not accidental, it's intentional, it's ignorance, but there are people who have really racist views. And it's not, I don't think it's most people, but it's a meaningful enough people that I think we have to address it. But Nico, my biggest
we have a segregationist as president.
Okay, there you go. But come back up for 1 second, Nico, before I give my last thought. My biggest concern is that I think if we're not having the kind of dialogue we're having, that we only make that worse. Because right now, most white people are scared that they're somehow racist, or if they say something, they will be. And a lot of people on the left, not your side left, but the traditional, the Joe Biden left,
yeah,
they're as racist as anyone because they're terrified that they look at everything in racial terms. They can't not. They see you, they cross to the other side of the street inadvertently, like they've created their own boogeyman around black people while claiming we're not racist.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. And listen, I'm a leftist, and to be frank, if somebody with my resume on the left was a white guy, I would have 1 million subscribers. Like, to be honest, I was coach debate for presidential candidates. I've started the largest Bernie Sanders organization in the world. I mean, there's a plethora of qualifications that no other lefty YouTuber has ever dreamed of having. And I did it by 32 years old. And I get more hate from the white leftists who have all these subscribers from just kissing Bernie's ass and then kowtowing every time they're told to by the Democratic Party than I do support. And so that just lets you know how ingrained it is, not only in our system, but that it's not a conservative thing. It is a systemic problem. It's not a conservative thing. It's like a systemic problem.
I like it. Hey, Nico, will you come back and do this again?
Absolutely. Of course. 100%.
You were great. Thank you so much. Now I'll do my quick last 60 seconds out. You guys, so if nothing else, to me, this is the kind of dialogue we want to be having, right? And again, stop putting everyone in a box. Stop defining what they have to be. We're all a lot of things, and start listening to who people really are. Listen to who Nico is. Listen to who Joe Biden really is. Listen to who Bernie is. Listen to who Trump is. I don't care, but listen to who people really are. Don't put them in a box. Don't decide based on some external characteristics, whether it's gender, race, a specific one viewpoint, economics. I don't care what your political party. And all of us need to start having these dialogues, or we are going nowhere fast. It's Rob Nelson Live. Thanks for watching.